Okay, can you guys see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, this was a talk that I actually did at APAC in China. I was actually in Wuhan just before Christmas. Anyways, another story there. But I actually did a talk at Chengdu and Shenzhen because I'd never seen the pandas. It was cool. Anyway, yeah, so this is a bit about me. I'll just quickly run through. I trained as an engineer, I did robotics and AI, and then but I decided, this is late 80s. I went to Wall Street, so Citibank and Citicorp. I was manager of the FX desk. And then I went back to it because I was very disillusioned. Making money is great, but, it's really a zero-sum game at the end of the day. So I left the dark side of the industry and went back to academia and did my PhD in Australia. And I was the associate dean in the IT school at Bond University. Then I created a company called Bond Wireless where we had some patents for text messaging. And this was like early days. Then I became an investor, an angel investor. Invested in maybe about 50 plus companies. How many of you, I don't know how many of you, I can't see all of you, but if you guys play computer games on Steam, there's a game that's been the top 10 for the last, 6 years called The Forest. So I'm an investor in this game and in the game, not in the company. So I get on revenue share. So I get a percentage of revenue off the sales of the game. And this COVID thing, this pandemic is sad, but it's been fantastic for this game. The sales has just shot up to the roof. Anyway, if you have time, I'll talk a bit more about my other project I'm working on, where I'm creating an investment revenue sharing platform called EPIC, Exponential Positive Impact Capital. So then I went to Singularity University in 2011, just before I met Jeevan. And Singularity University was in NASA. They have moved out now. And this is Peter Diamandis. You must have heard of him. He's the co-founder of Singularity University. He's very, very he's a real futurist and he's a very, very charismatic guy. And Singularity University at the time had this program called the GSP, the Graduate Studies Program, and now they call it the Global Solution Program, where they chose 80 people every year from over, the year that I applied in 2011, there were 2,200 applicants to spend 3 months at NASA, where you learn from people that you only see in TED Talks and so on. And they'll find it's a 10 weeks program. The final 3 to 5 weeks, you got to work on a project that will impact the life of 1 billion people within 10 years positively. So I was one of the lucky guys that went into the program. Since then, there have been some Sri Lankans in the program too. They have very interesting projects. And the other co-founder is Ray Kurzweil. So the name of the university came from Ray's book, The Singularity is Near. So those who don't know Ray, Ray is a prolific inventor, the same ilk of Edison. Basically, he invented the first AI-generated music when he was 17 years old. And then he decided he was very passionate about trying to allow blind people to access books at the US library. So he invented the optical reading machine for the blind. And if you're using a scanner, the CCD chip, the OCR programs, speech generation, your Siri, all came from work that Ray did for this project. So he became very good friend with Stevie Wonder, as you know, is a very famous blind singer and composer. And Stevie Wonder was very, very, grateful that Ray could now allow him to access books in the library. So they asked, he asked Ray, could you help me design a keyboard that I could play different instruments on it? Because I'm blind, I like composing music, but I can't play some instruments. So Ray invented the Kurzweil synthesizer, which, you guys might have seen it. And when I was in Korea running some workshops for the Korean government, I came across Ray's poster at this shopping mall because Ray sold his company, the Kurzweil synthesizer you see on all the pop bands, to Hyundai Corporation. So this is the world's largest digital piano. So Ray's a really interesting guy. He wrote like 7 books or more, actually. If you want to know how to live forever, read his book Transcend. It's really interesting. He talks about how if we can live for at least 25 years, we already have we know why we age, and we have the technology to reverse it. But it takes about 25 years for each of these steps to to be obtained. So essentially, if you can live for at least 25 years, you will be able to extend your life by another 25 years and so on and so forth, and you might be able to live forever if you want. But his whole book, Singularity, is near basically talk about how machines will be faster than us by 2029, and we can merge with a machine, the singularity, technological singularity, and live forever if you want to. As long as you don't get knocked down by a bus or something. So we don't have immortality, we have amortality. So, so the thing is that when I talk about exponential curves, right, I'm sure most of you are aware what it is, but the problem is our brain is not designed to think exponentially. We kind of think linearly. And what I mean by that is, if I say that, you walk a meter a step, if you take 30 steps, you would have gone 30 meters, right? But if I say, you take a step and you double it each time, so 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, in 30 steps, you would have gone 26 and a half times around the earth, or over 1 billion meters, right? And that's how fast some of these tech are moving. That's why we call them exponential technologies. So at Singularity, when I was in the program, essentially in the final 3 to 5 weeks, you got to work on one of these project areas like education, energy, environment, food, global health, poverty, security, space, and water. And this is very similar to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that I'm sure you guys are all aware of. So, and for those of you who don't know what the UN SDGs are, I highly encourage you to learn about it and apply it and make sure that you meet as many of these goals as possible, because all the 192 countries in the world, including North Korea in the UN, have all agreed in 2015 that they will try to achieve this within 15 years, each of these goals. So essentially, there are a lot of government support and international support for meeting these goals. So what is happening, in a minute of our day? Well, right now we're all kind of on lockdown, right? So these numbers would have increased even more. And these are not even taking into account websites in China, right? So as you can see, there are basically, this is back in 2019, right? There are about almost 10,000 people every minute taking an Uber ride, and there are 1.4 million users swiping on Tinder. And you can have look at this chart yourself. Another way to look at it is a snapshot around the world in 2019, right? We are almost 7.8 billion people now, and we have almost 60% urbanization. There's no time in history where there's so many people clustered into cities, which also explains why the pandemic, has such a great effect, right? Because, it's hitting the urban areas very quickly. And there are almost 5 billion mobile users and almost 4.5 billion, I think by now, almost 5 billion people on the internet right now. And so there's no better time than now to actually be an entrepreneur, right? Because you have almost 5 billion people who are your future customers, investors, and potential partners. Another way to measure how things are moving quickly is how long does it take a company to reach $1 billion, the unicorn status, right? Harley Davidson, as you know, the motorcycle company, took 86 years. IBM took 46. Facebook took 5. Instagram took 2 years. And some Chinese companies, real estate companies, took 7 months. And the fastest company in the world to go from 0 to $1 billion in 4 months is Jet.com, which got sold to Walmart. It's similar to Amazon. So, it's amazing what technology can empower a lot of people to do. A small group of people could actually create a lot of impact. And that includes all of you here in this talk. The other thing that, you can measure is how long does it take any new technology to reach 50 million users. Telephone took 75 years, right? Internet took 4 years. Facebook took 2 years. YouTube took 10 months. Pokemon Go, which I'm a big fan of. So if you guys play Pokemon, let me know. You can add me and we can exchange Pokemons. Took 19 days. And the fastest in the world at the moment, that's not in China though, again, China has got its different stats, is Chewbacca Mom, right? 50 million views in 24 hours. And what had all this technology brought us? A lot of interesting things, right? I mean, I came across this cartoon I thought was really, really interesting. In the old days, you just name your pet whatever you want, but today, you basically it's a security question answer. So you should think, what you want to call your dog. And this is another interesting chart that I came across, right? Look at the frequency of miracles, prior to the invention of camera. After the invention of camera, where a lot of fake news in those days were disproved, it dropped. And then when Photoshop was invented, the numbers went up again. But that was interesting. And this is another one that I thought was pretty funny, right? My wife asked me why I spoke so softly in the house. I said I was afraid Mark Zuckerberg was listening. She laughed, I laughed, Alexa laughed, Siri laughed, Cortana laughed. So, oh, good, I got a few laughter out of this. If you look at my profile, I really want to be a Chinese comedian, right? I can do a jolly good Indian accent. Oh, definitely, I'm running a call center here. Anyway,
then should go off mute because just to give him laughter. I think
oh, thanks, Jivan. Oh, so I at least got one person laughing. Thanks for that. Okay, so in an exponential curve, right, it's very deceptive. Why? Because if you were to essentially start from a very small number like 0.1, you double it, what do you get? 0.2, double that, what do you get? 0.4, right? You keep doubling it, and essentially things like 3D printers and so on, people get disillusioned, right? Like, if you look at the Gartner curve, of the value of disillusionment, this is what happens, right? Because people think like, oh, this tech is not going to be, we're not going to go anywhere. It's taking so long. Like 3D printing, right? 3D printing has been around since the 80s. But one of the reasons why it has kind of lacked is because obviously technology, but also the patents. One person held most of the patents, and those patents expired 2 years ago. So hopefully now you're going to see some really interesting 3D printers coming out from companies like HP and so on, where you can 3D print things other than plastic, right? So once you
just to digress, do you want to tell them about your project on the hoverboards and how that the patent?
I was going to show that afterwards, actually. If we have
I hope
time.
It's not an embarrassing video, but yeah,
it is actually. I had to dig it up, but anyway, I found it. Yeah. So anyway, but the thing is that once you hit 1, as you've seen, in 30 steps, you go to 1 billion, right? Then people get amazed. An example is LED lights. It's not new technology, right? LED lights have been around for 10 years, but it was so expensive. If you could predict that within 10 years, it's going to be so cheap, and you can think that way, how do you prepare your company to basically make use of these cheap LEDs? I mean, previously you might never thought of using LEDs on your shirt or your clothing, or wiring up a whole building. But imagine what you could have done with it, and start planning for it. And that's what we kind of try to do in Singularity. We try to predict where the trends are going, and we call that the knee of the curve. If you're at that inflection point and it's going to go up this really fast exponential curve, you got to be ready for it. And IoTs, as you can see, the 50 billion over items on the IoT that was predicted by Ericsson by 2025, and they revised it to 500 billion, right? And the cost of sequencing your genes has fallen faster than Moore's law, right? Moore's law says that technology, like speed of computer, miniaturization, efficiency of the computer computation doubles every 18 months. But the cost of sequencing your genes has fallen faster than Moore's law, right? And you're like, well, who cares about sequencing of genes? Well, I'll tell you why it's important. So there's so many companies in this area, right? Origin, BGI, Beijing Genomics Institute, and 23andMe, right? Because BGI, for example, it's the largest sequencing company in the world. Are sequencing, the Chinese are not just sequencing human genes, they're also sequencing anything that tastes good, because that is the new IP, right? I mean, that the Americans tried to patent basmati rice, and then the Indian government managed to step in and stop that. So why is it so important? Let me just show you some stuff that we're doing, right? So this is my classmate at Singularity, Pablo Solomon from Uruguay. We're having a spit party. We're spitting into this test tube. If you have tried one of these genetic tests, you would know what I'm talking about. You spit into this test tube. Obviously, don't eat. Try not to eat before you do that, because then you might be sequenced as a, well, I was going to say a bat, but okay, that's not appropriate now. Yeah. So anyway, probably idiapam, right? So then you'll have genetic material of rice. So anyway, you spin this test tube, you pack it up, and you send it off to 23andMe, and within 6 weeks, they send you an email. You log in, and you can basically see the data. So I remember I did this at NASA back in 2011. So I can see all my medical history and everything else, which unfortunately the FDA in the US kind of stopped the normal public accessing their health information without consulting a medical professional, because they don't think you're smart enough to deal with your own data. The good news is you can download the entire genetic sequence and upload it onto another site in Europe or somewhere and basically get the information you need. So what do you find out from doing this genetic test? Well, you get your health traits, you get your ancestry, and I'll show you mine because I did it back in 2011, so I have the data, right? So this is a word of warning for those who have not done it and you want to do this. A lot of divorces happen after this because suddenly you find out that your kids are not your kids, your mom, your parents are not your parents, and all that kind of stuff.
Sorry, Clarence, I'm going to predict that you're part Indian.
Oh, definitely. And yeah, more on the Southern Indian side. Anyway, so this is my health data. As you can see here, it's really interesting, right? I mean, I know that I might have a higher risk of age-related macular degeneration of the eye. So therefore, I might want to basically have more frequent eye checkup. You know how most East Asians turn red, right, when they drink alcohol? Look at me. I'm not red, right? I didn't drink today, but even if I did, my face don't flush, right? I don't have the gene that causes it to flush. But the more interesting stuff is like if I'm taking Plavix, which I do, basically my drug response is reduced. So my GP doesn't know this, right? I gave this data to him, but the GP couldn't be bothered, right? And this is the thing. It's amazing that so much information that's in here that's not being used. So this is interesting, right? This is so I'm from Malaysia originally. I live in America, Hong Kong, and so on, but I studied and worked in America. My grandparents from my paternal side, because being male, I have the X and Y chromosome, so I can actually see the genetic makeup of both parents. Unfortunately, women can only get the mom side of the genes. So my grandfather from my dad's side of the family is from Hainan Island, small little island, like they call it the Hawaii of the East, right? So nothing really interesting in the genetic spread here. It's all, mainly in Asia, right? Down to New Zealand and up into Siberia, right? But my mom's side of the family is from Fuzhou, which is a province in China, southern part of China. And look at this. I'm highly correlated to the American Indians. This is really interesting, isn't it? So I thought being Chinese, and Jivan knows that, whole family being, like high rollers in the casino. I thought, being related to the American Indians, I should go back and claim some Indian reservation land and open a casino. Okay, when I did this talk, right? Okay, I'm glad he's laughing because when I did this talk for the Health Informatics Conference, somebody tweeted like, Dr. Tan, great talk, but you should not make fun of the first American people. But I just thought that, being related to it and
But small side note, Doctor, actually the Han people from your dad's side then went to Taiwan, who then eventually went to Philippines and then Papua New
Sri
Guinea.
Lanka.
No, I'm saying they became the Mayuri people, or the Polynesian islands. So
okay,
great heritage there as well.
All right, great. Yeah, and then why is it so important? Because do you guys know why the pharmaceutical industry call the R&D for new drugs drug discovery and not R&D? Because they have no idea how some of the diseases work. For example, we only have about 50 to 60 cancer drugs for breast cancer when there are actually over 2,000 different types of breast cancers, right? So what this technology, this genetic technology has provided us now is open up new fields like pharmacogenomics. What is that? I think some of you know, but if you don't, just quickly explain it to you. Essentially, it is bespoking the medication or the recommendation of supplements to you based on your genetic makeup. See, you and I are given medication and dosage based on the test on a small population, mainly in the Western world. But you and I may have genetic, material that does not react well with that kind of dosage or that kind of drugs, like Vioxx, right, which kill a lot of people. But if they had done a scan, they would have seen that people with the genetic material that could cause a heart defect with taking this medication and could have stopped them from using it. The other areas like obviously pharmacomicrobiomics. So as you know, there are 10 times more bacteria in your body than cells. So you're really more a bacterial being than a human being. And essentially they found that a lot of medical issues, like, we're always being taught, well, right now, we should wash our hands and, and all that stuff to kill the virus. But we've been taught that bacteria is bad and so on. But there are actually a whole bunch of bacteria, the majority of the bacteria in our gut that we think do nothing, but they actually did something. They actually stopped the bad bacteria from spreading, and also our gene from expressing itself and mutate and become cancerous. So, basically they did some studies, if, on kids that were born naturally vaginally and those who are born through cesarean, which is a sterile environment, the gut bacteria that they have is different, and that determines the allergy reaction when they become adult. So the only way, if you take a heavy antibiotic to get the bacteria back into your body, if you have your appendix removed, because the appendix we thought did nothing, also did something apparently. It keeps all the bacteria we encountered. So when you take antibiotic, and it kills everything off in your stomach, in your intestinal tracts, it repopulates it. But the only way to get it, if you don't have an appendix anymore and don't have the bacteria, is to have a fecal transplant. Yeah, basically you got to get the shit from somebody and stick it up where or get some fecal tablets. And epigenetics is how the environment impacts your body. So at Singularity, we're looking at all these problems that we had, right? Like healthcare versus sick care. We actually don't have a healthcare system today. If you think about it, we have a sick care system, right? Nobody in the health industry makes money if you're healthy, but if you're sick, everybody makes money. So it's not in their interest to actually see you healthy. So what can we do about that? So one of the things that we taught about at Singularity was use the old ancient Chinese village doctor healthcare model, where the Chinese paid the doctor every morning to the Chinese village doctor every morning if they're not sick. If they are sick, the doctor don't get paid. So in a way, our healthcare insurance system is supposed to do the same, right? But like in Australia, we have a very big fund here called the Medibank, public health fund, which the government decided to sell off. And what happens now is any money that's earned by the health fund does not go back to the members. They actually go to the shareholders who might not be members. And that's the problem, right? So I'm just showing you the problems that we have, but I don't have the perfect solution. And I would love for you guys to think about it. If we actually do the COVID, the EXO COVID challenge, this might be something that you guys want to think about and brainstorm to disrupt this industry. So in 3D printing, we can 3D print, I think, over 100 over products now, right? My favorite, obviously, is the chocolate. And this is me actually being 3D printed at NASA because they tried to 3D scan my head, the bust, but I think my balding patch just destroyed their machine. So they said, Clarence, we just 3D scan your entire body, and that's what happened. Some interesting stuff though, right? This is a tumor of a trachea that was 3D printed from the data of an MRI machine. So this is the amazing stuff that we can actually do now. And about 2 years ago now, something happened in space that I thought was, as big as Neil Armstrong stepping on the moon, right? So this is a company actually at a Singularity company that basically made a 3D printer in space. What did they do? So in the space station, they needed a tool, a wrench, but they couldn't actually get the wrench sent up to space. And if you send it by US post, it'll take forever and cost you a bomb. So they send the data and they 3D scan it and printed it, and we made the first tool in space. Why is it such a big deal? Because we actually made tools in space, which means that we can use that to actually help us explore and colonize space, because we're now able to make things in space. So I think that's a big thing. So my background was in AI. My PhD was actually, I wrote a book on artificial neural network applications in finance. Oh God, 20 over years ago, I think. And you guys know that, there's a, kind of a more generalized technology called AGI now, artificial general intelligence. So AI is the other big thing that's happening, right? I mean, you guys know about how IBM Watson defeated human contestants in the game of Jeopardy. But do you know that he also read over 4 million pages of medical journals and can better diagnose cancer than your average doctor? That's a really big disruption there, right? Because I don't think a doctor have time to read 100 pages, a month or a year. This is Vinod Khosla, right? He's the co-founder of Sun Microsystems and also Khosla Ventures. So he came to Singularity and he's holding my mobile phone because my friend on the Gold Coast developed this product, which is not a big deal now because your iWatch can do that now, but it was a big deal then. Essentially, you put your fingers on the phone and it can detect atrial fibrillation of the heart. It's an EKG device. It was the first FDA-approved medical device on your phone. So Vinod predicted that within 10 years, so now again, within 5 years now, all GPs are going to be redundant because you can basically use technology like this to diagnose your heart. You can even prick a finger, put a drop of blood onto a slide and pop into your phone, and the data will go up to the cloud, and it would basically diagnose what problem you have and send instructions to your 3D printer to print your vitamin or the medication you need. So this is some of the stuff that he was thinking of. Another Singularity company that was interesting, and unfortunately, this product is no longer available on the iPhone. It's from Beyond Verbal, an Israeli company, and it detects your voice and the nuances of your voice, and it tells you how the person is feeling. It's really useful. You could have used it while I'm doing this talk, and then you can, whether I'm bullshitting you, and therefore you can just, leave Zoom now. I use it all the time in the lecture theaters and so on because the guy is telling me BS, and I might as well just, not waste my time, right? So it's really cool. I mean, and they made it free on the app on the phone because they're collecting data, but their market is actually call centers. So when you call the local telco and complain, they will turn it on and they say like, oh, Jeevan cannot be satisfied. So there's no point, trying to pacify him, just hang up. That's what they're using it for. Okay, the valuation is a bit off. I mean, Uber's, I don't know what Uber valuation is now. One reason why Uber is such a big threat and disruption is it's not disrupting taxis, right? It's not just that, it's all transportation. Taking a person from point A to point B is no different than taking a parcel or anything else from point A to point B. But why did Uber go into self-navigation car? You heard about how they stole technology from Google's Waymo, and they also tried to hire the entire Carnegie Mellon University Center for Autonomous Vehicles, and then had to pay the university over $1 billion because the only person that Uber really pays is the driver, right? If they get rid of the driver, then it's just money for jam. So I was in Oxford actually in November last year, chairing a session on AI and ethics. And this is the interesting thing, right? This is the trolley problem, right? If you have let's say a school bus coming down a single lane bridge, right? Coming down a single lane bridge, and you got a self-navigation car that is driving you, and the school bus is out of control with 20 school kids in there. Would you kill yourself, drive off the bridge and save the kids? Or would you kill the kids and save yourself? You can decide as a driver, but if the AI program is driving the car, it's only being taught to save you. So you'll probably crash into the school bus, kill the kids, your airbags go off, and you survive, right? And if I ask how many of you would kill yourself to save 20 kids, most of you would say yes, I assume. But I assumed wrongly when I did this talk in China to a bunch of school kids. You can watch my TEDx talk in Shanghai last year. None of the kids put their hands up. I'm like, huh, this is really strange. And then they told me, oh yeah, because I'm also a kid. So, first me, then my family, then the rest of the world. So that's was interesting, culturally different. And, if you can actually go to the MIT moral machine and try different scenario, would you kill a robber? Would you kill your pet to save other people, a stranger, and so on? And they collected data, and the interesting thing was that they published a paper on this. They found that when they did a comparison of Westerners and Asians, most Asians, particularly the Koreans, the Confucianism society, and probably Sri Lanka too, I guess, from the Buddhism compassionate side of things, they would probably not kill an older person, an elderly person. But in the West, it's like, yeah, you know, he's lived long enough, might as well die. Maybe that explains to you the pandemic that we are seeing right now, right? You know, doesn't it strike you as strange that all the fastest aging population country seems to have the biggest issue right now, right? Anyway, you guys might have seen this. So this is the, you know, this is actually running now in Dubai and Las Vegas. So it's really cool, right? It can take you from point A to point B without any navigation. The problem is that the battery life is less than 30 minutes. So after 30 minutes, good luck.
What happens after 30 minutes? It just crashes?
All right. So anyway, and then the other thing that, you know, now they call it the 6D, but really the 4Ds in terms of digitization. I'm not sure you guys are familiar with this, but if you read Peter Diamandis' book, it talks about the phases that you go through with any services or product that goes through the space. So initially it's deceptive, as I told you, because you know, it starts from a very small number and suddenly accelerate, right? So when you digitize something, it becomes information enabled. And what does that mean? It means then, you know, that, you know, basically things start dematerializing, right? Physical things. Like with your mobile phone right now, right? You replace a radio, a microphone recorder, a camera, a video camera, and so on. And if you take the value of your smartphone of $100 US or whatever, and put in the actual value of the products that were actually, when they first came out, how much they cost, you would have almost $1 million of device on your phone, right? So now you have a technology that is disrupting a whole bunch of different things here. You know, as you know, the guy, you know, the Maasai warrior in the plains of the Masai Mara has access to more information than the president of the United States back in the 90s, right? And this guy is running a call center with his phone. So, you know, you can be anywhere and just use a mobile phone and you can be running a whole bunch of businesses, right? Of course, then how do you purpose on this technology? The problem is that, you know, some people like the millennials and so on, if the Titanic is sinking, they might be just posting a selfie or, you know, taking a photo of it. So we need to kind of be smart about how we can use technology to solve some of the biggest problems. What do you think this guy was doing back in the 80s? All right, he was taking a screenshot. Today, what do you do to take a screenshot? There's two buttons, right? You just press it, you know, on your phone and you can take a snapshot. Okay, then after dematerializing, things become cheaper and cheaper. So you demonetize the stuff, right? Your music, your phone calls, and so on. Even Zoom right now, right? It's all become cheaper and cheaper until everybody have access to it, and that's where democratization comes in. I think Sri Lanka was supposed to do the Google the Google Loon project, right? I don't think it took off, but you know, the Loon project was basically trying to provide access to the internet. And then, you know, India launched, I think last year, wasn't it, 104 micro satellites into space. And obviously SpaceX is trying to do that too, because if you have 2,200 of these small little satellites, you can have your alternative internet access. And obviously Aquila tried it in India and failed. They basically tried to create a garden wall using drones to provide internet coverage. So, you know, so that's how you democratize the technology. So when you have disruptive stress, it also provides disruptive opportunity, right? I mean, you guys know about the Instagram and the Kodak moment, right? You know, Kodak at its peak at about 136,000 employees globally. The same year that Kodak went bust, Instagram, back in 2010, I think, Instagram got sold to Facebook for $1 billion. How many employees do you think Instagram had when they sold off to Facebook? Kodak had 136 or 140,000 people at its peak. So Instagram only had 12 employees. Okay, so that shows you a small group of people can create huge impact. And obviously, you know, Hyatt and Airbnb is the same. But the other thing I want to talk about too is that, you know, when you create a corporation, right? Singularity started as a nonprofit, but, you know, so they're nonprofit companies and they're obviously for-profit companies. But the problem with nonprofits is that, you know, at Singularity's case, it basically can't take advisory positions in companies they spun off, can't take shares in the companies they spun off. So they can't actually do much as a nonprofit. And every year you have to look for sponsors to fund it. So, you know, it's not really a sustainable model. But then if you're just totally for-profit, there's also something that is not really desirable, right? So Singularity, look at that model. Like the problem is that, you know, if you essentially become a profit-making company, you answer to the shareholders, and you might be forced to do something that you don't want to do, or your company is not, you know, it's not in their ethos to do it. For example, I come to you as a director of a company and I'm a shareholder, and I said, oh, you know, this project is great. You know, we're going to chop all these trees down, you know, move all these native of their land, burn everything down, and take the timber and sell it and make a lot of money. And if you don't do it, I can sue you because you're not taking care of the shareholder interest. So we didn't want to be a profit-making company either. So we chose the middle road. Something called a benefit corporation, a real social enterprise, which allow us to make profit, but also allow us to turn down projects that are against the objective of the company, even though it's profitable. So, you know, our current system is broken. So this is some of the problems that, you know, I'd like to highlight to you guys to think about. You know, in the US, there are 3.5 million homeless people and over 18 million empty homes. Something is wrong here, right? We're dumping food. And I was in Kenya about a year ago. You know, essentially my friend runs street charity there. One of this is lunch bowl where we fed 250 kids every Saturday for lunch. And it's so sad to see we have to shut the gates for so many other kids that are hoping to get a meal, but we just couldn't feed everybody. And here we are dumping food. So there are a lot of problems that we have not solved that we need to look at. And you guys know about climate change. What are the solutions? I mean, you know, Andrew Yang's, you know, he was in his platform when he was trying to run for the president of the United States was to basically have a basic income of $1,000. Now it seems like that's the best model for this COVID thing. Everything is kind of slowed down now, and the Republicans in America is actually now, you know, kind of saying like, yeah, we need to pay everybody some money so that they can survive. An example of this is Utah. You know, in Utah, in America, where the Mormons are, where the MLM headquarters of many companies are, because they're very family oriented, so you can sell easily. In Utah, they decided to experiment and say, you know, and see if they were to provide homes to homeless people, would that actually help? So they tried for 7 years. And, you know, people are thinking like, oh, give free homes to homeless people? Oh, what a silly idea. You see, unlike Gold Coast where I live in Australia or Sri Lanka, if you're homeless and you sleep on the beach, you're not going to die, right? It's not cold enough to kill you. But in Utah, it's so cold that you would probably be dead, right? So the thing is, when they found that when they provide homes to homeless people, they actually save money. Hospitalization costs went down. You know, prison rates went down, crime went down, because once you have shelter, you have your basic needs met, you can then think about your future. But if you're fighting for survival, you can't even do that. If you guys are fans of game theory, ask yourself this, right? If you're a homeless person, if I am deciding, should I rob a gas station or a liquor store or whatever, right? What's the outcome if I fail? If I fail, I'm going to have, you know, shelter and food. I go to prison. If I succeed, I also have shelter and food. So if I don't, then I'll probably die of, you know, of cold. So it makes sense that, you know, basically a rational person would commit crime if they have no choice, right? So some of the things that, you know, happening right now, I mean, you know, one is that obviously robot took my job, and now we're actually hoping that a robot would do the work that all these people have been, you know, because of the pandemic can't do, right? The other way to see that you're now free to do whatever you want to do. So how do we get here? You guys know about the first, second, third, and the fourth industrial revolution. And human skills that AI can replace reading, writing, speaking, listening, looking at things, integrating knowledge. This is from Jeremy Howard. I highly encourage you to have a look at his project, Fast.ai, and his TEDx talk, right? He talked about all these areas like radiologists and all this stuff, other people that will be gone. Anything that's repetitive, that's routine, essentially will be gone. But you see that the robots are taking away jobs that we don't really want to do, which is mundane, boring, dull, repetitive jobs, right? And dangerous. For example, in nursing, I don't think anybody become a nurse because they love cleaning bedpans and filling up forms and cleaning sheets and changing bed sheets, right? The robot is taking away all that job, so it gives them more time to essentially do what they like to do, which is essentially taking care of the patients, right? So yeah, so if you can see again, this is Kai-Fu Lee's talk. So he was the head of AI in Apple. A great talk that he did, and his new book is actually pretty cool too. And you can see some of the charts in there. He talks about what kind of jobs could still be available. Where you need compassion and optimization. AI and human works better. Human being the bigger picture here. If compassion is not needed and is this optimization, then AI is going to replace completely. Where compassion is not needed, but there's some creativity or strategy, you can see AI and human working together. So you can see some new art that is being developed or music being composed by machines. The more strategic stuff, so I think Jivan's job is safe.
Wow.
Right. So I'm not sure you guys seen this robot chef. This is one of my favorite. I think it should be out by now. This it costs about 15,000 pounds, right? It learns how to cook from a real master chef. Unfortunately, it's British. I don't know why. Has 2,000 over recipes. Not only cleans, but also also put the dishes into the dishwasher. I really hope they have idiyappam and hodi. I'll buy one. But you see, there's new applications here, right? Now you can make idiyappam as an app, put it on the platform, and every time somebody uses it, you get paid.
This would really help in the COVID situation.
Yeah, so some of the projects came out of Singularity. I'll just quickly show you. This one is called Medic Sensation. It was an Indonesian girl who won the competition in Jakarta and went to Singularity. And she worked with two Israeli guys, a medical doctor from Harvard and an engineer from MIT. And they developed this glove that allow women to check their own breasts for lumps. Because if you can imagine the developing world where there are no roads and no power, how can you bring a mammogram machine in? But this glove has got basically sensors on it and an SD card, so the information can be taken and sent to the nearest internet point where the data can be uploaded and the doctors can basically look at the case and provide medical advice. Now, why this story is interesting is because this Indonesian girl coming from a Muslim country would never have the opportunity to work with the Israeli people from a Jewish state, but at Singularity they did, and they basically set up a company in Chile. Modern Meadow, is a company. I tell my vegan friends that all of us will be vegan, right? Because Modern Meadow is a Singularity company. And back in 2013, or 2011, actually, they made this beef patty, which basically barbecued it in NASA and ate it, and it tasted great. That was the good news. The bad news was that it cost $10 million. Fast forward to 2013, Maastricht University, on a project funded by Sergey Brin, dropped down to about 300,000. Today, the cost of this 3D printed patty is down to about $10. If it can go down to $1, then basically cattle ranching will be over. I mean, you might as well just 3D print your meat. You don't need to kill any animal for food. AI Poly is a project came out of Singularity from an Australian girl who was Australian Chinese Australian of the Year, and she developed this program called AI Poly that allow blind people to interact with the environment. I think it's available on the App Store. You turn it on and it will tell you like, oh, Jivan is wearing a red shirt or whatever it is, and explain to you your environment. Focus at Wheel is actually a company I invested in, a Singularity company, and you can try this, you guys. if you listen to the music for up to 45 minutes, your productivity will go up by up to 400%. If you're not autistic or have ADHD, if you do, so it works in 7 out of 10 people. If you do, then essentially you need a different program. But you can try it out, it's pretty cool. And I've never met the founder. He's actually Will Henshaw. I only met him 3 years after I invested in the company. I tried it, myself, and for 15 minutes, and it was so productive that I gave him the money. And then I visited him at his place, and he showed me all these Grammy awards that he won because he used not Grammy, but all these music awards, because he had a group called London Beat, had some big hit in the 90s, and I said, sorry, I'm an 80s guy, so I never heard his song before. But he was also the lead guitarist for Eurythmics back in the 80s. Some other interesting projects like 3D printing, basically this guy, Scott Summit, he essentially designed 3D printed prosthetic limbs for people who, who have lost their limbs and, it normally don't look nice. So he tried to make it look really cool. My favorite was actually this company called Archie. They came up with the idea of putting ultrasonic cleaners onto like a mouth guard. You put it into your mouth for 20 seconds and your whole teeth is clean. Other projects are simple ones that, that are used by Lowe's, which is like the hardware store in America. Essentially, it's just really an iPad with a broomstick pole and a big iPad broomstick pole. And you can essentially take any tool or any fasteners you want and show it to this robot, and it can basically take you to the aisle where to find the particular product. Simple thing that you can actually do, not that difficult. Gamification, I'm sure most of you, I think some of you mentioned that you guys are working on that. Just my son, a long time ago, playing computer games as like most kids would do, and basically trying to keep the parents away, talking on the phone, watching TV, doing multiple stuff at the same time. Why do we like to play games? Well, there's a theory that, humans are natural problem solvers. In a game, there's a solution. And when you solve it, you basically level up, right? So that's why we love playing games. But how can you make use of that inner need to want to play a game as a tool that we can help us basically solve problems? So I'll show you some of the stuff that's happening. So that's the thing about education, right? In games, your score keep going higher, but in education, you start at 100 and you keep going down, right? So maybe if we turn the whole education paradigm into getting higher scores rather than penalizing people in exams, maybe we have a better effect. So the simplest gamification idea I can show you is originally in Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam. Somehow boys and men like to aim at stuff when they go to the urinal. So by just putting this small little fly patch onto the urinal, they have 80% cleaner toilets. No instruction manual required. But on a more serious note, malariaspot.org is a Singularity project that came out a year before I went to Singularity. Dr. Miguel from WHO was very, very distressed to learn that hundreds of thousands of people die every year from malaria, which makes the mosquito the most dangerous animal on earth, besides bats, if you don't eat them. But anyway, basically what he did was he went out to the field, to India and to Africa, and found the bottleneck for finding a medication for malaria, the right dosage and so on, is the problem of counting the number of parasites in the bloodstream, the pathogen in the bloodstream. So he took because a technician takes 20 minutes to do that, he uploaded all the data onto the cloud and basically into a game called malariaspot.org. What you do is you shoot the parasite. Every time you shoot it, you're helping them count. So when you play this game for 1 minute, you save one life. So that's a pretty cool project, right? Foldit, as you guys have probably heard, they're trying to use it now to fold it to kill the virus for the pandemic, for the COVID. But it was also originally designed to help people learn how to fold proteins as a game, because humans are very good at solving games like Rubik's Cubes, but machines are not. So if you can basically fold a protein and insert it into a HIV virus, you can find a cure for it. The top scorer for this game for a long time was not a graduate. She was a secretary in London. So that shows you that, even though you may not have the opportunity to go to medical school and have education in biology or medical research, you have the opportunity to find a cure for HIV or even in COVID. And there's another one for the cancer research staff. And I ran some competitions for Singularity. I was the Asia Pacific ambassador, and this girl, Susan Graham, she won a project called Biocarbon Engineering, where they use drones to plant trees. Because a human tree planter in Canada can maybe plant 138 trees a day. A drone never gets tired. It can shoot out seed pod and go back and recharge and keep doing it. So the plan was to grow 1 billion trees in a year. So that takes me to basically, right now we have this drudgery of going to school, go to work, have a family and die, right? But things are changing, right? Because now I told you can reverse aging and so on. And the thing is that something called ikigai, I mean, some of you might know what it means. It's a Japanese word for like the reason for being, your purpose in life, right? Purpose for anything. So it's not just enough to basically, do what you love, right? You need to basically make sure that it's also what the world needs. Because if I say I'm very passionate, like Ted Nugent in America, his passion is shooting animals, right? Or if I'm a serial killer, my passion is killing people. If I follow my passion, that's not necessarily good for society, right? You also make sure you need to have the skill set to basically support what you like to do and get paid in digital currency or in real cash, right? So how do you find your passion? So a number of ways. One is figure out when you were a kid, what do you like to do? When I was a kid, I like to remove all the electric motors from my electric toys and stuff like that. So maybe that's why I went to electrical engineering initially. Or think about, if you could never fail anything you do, or if you're already a billionaire today, what would you like to do to change the world? And that's what you should be doing. How do you acquire the skills? Well, I think most of you have done that. Go to universities or a professor in both these universities. Traditional method, or go online, right? So many online classes now. Or join a startup, or a combination of all this. And what the world needs, I already showed you the SDG. So look at what the world needs. These are the problems that we have, and I'm sure there are more than this, right? But this will be a good guide. And then, when you have a traditional, when you go for a traditional company, you got your boss up there and, and all the guys underneath, and all they look up, they see, as you can see, I had to black this up because I did this for a school, and look down, you see just shit, right? So there are new management style now. It's kind of flat, essentially like Valve, which is the company that runs a Steam gaming platform. And essentially, there's a new management style called holacracy, right? Where basically you see whether somebody fits, like Zappos, right? Whether they fit into your company culture or model. And if they do, then you ask them what they want to do, rather than create a functional specs and then get somebody to keep doing it. And then, because they have no purpose, right? So what happened is then if somebody get a better offer, they'll be gone because they don't see the big picture of what they're actually trying to achieve. So the sense of purpose is very important. So we talk about, how Kodak went bankrupt and, Instagram got hired with 13 people. So the whole new world that you're seeing now is a world from scarcity of resources to abundance, right? Technology is delivering dividends of huge amount of stuff, becoming cheaper and cheaper and more stuff, right? I mean, I did a talk for the Global Tax Conference at Deloitte in Bangkok a few years ago. And they were telling me that, they consult, basically jobs in compliance, for example, will be gone within 5 years. And they were basically saying that, how the whole world is trying to cut corporate tax and encouraging companies to invest in them. But when you cut the corporate tax, you need to increase revenue from somewhere. So what do most countries in the world do? They increase the GST or the VAT, right? So London's like 20% now. Romania went up to 42% at one time. And guess what? When they raised the GST or the VAT, actual revenue didn't go up. Why? And Deloitte actually told me 3 reasons why. One is this, from scarcity to abundance, right? In the old days, as in Australia, we have a 10% GST, right? So in the old days, when you buy a big screen TV, how much did it cost you? 20,000, 50,000. Today, how much did it cost you? $500. So the collection of the government collect, because the cost of goods have gone down because of technology development, has essentially decreased the revenue. The second one is like services. In the old days, you want to do market research, you hire somebody, a company to do it. So they charge you and they collect tax for the government, right? Today, what do? You Google it. And then Google says, oh, well, we're not a market research company. People are using the tool, but we are a banner advertising company, and we're in Ireland where we don't pay tax. So the government collects nothing in Australia anyway. And the third one was most mind-blowing. You know, the crop shoes, the plastic shoes? In the old days, when you make a pair of shoes, about 55% goes to tax, input tax, labor tax, payroll tax, and then sales tax. Today, you can download the entire blueprint for the shoe and 3D print in your house. And in Europe, anything that's less than 100 euros, the cartridges for the spools are less than 100 euros. So you pay no tax on it, and the government loses out entirely. So that's where the disruption is coming. So in a world of abundance of exponential technology, where we see energy price becoming cheaper and cheaper until it's almost free, new forms of art, healthcare, resources, and so on. And if you read Peter Diamandis' first book, Abundance, The Future is Better Than You Think, he has this aluminum foil there. I'm not sure how many of you read the book, but the reason why he had the aluminum foil is because aluminum is one of the most abundant mineral in the world. But before the 18th century, it was the most expensive metal in the world because the cost of extraction was very expensive to heat. The melting point is really high, right? If you go to Washington, D.C., the pyramid on top of the Washington Monument is not gold. It's actually aluminum. So that tells you, in the old days, how precious that metal was. But when they invented electrolysis and they can extract aluminum out of bauxite, the price of aluminum dropped completely, right? Until today, we use it, we just throw it away. Nobody think of even, recycling it really. So that shows you what technology can do. This is just some stuff that they've done, but we talk about things becoming cheaper, and then like newspaper, revenue dropping, music revenue dropping, and then even products for making self-navigation car coming, LiDAR and so on, becoming cheaper and cheaper. And you guys know Jack and Drecker? So Jack and Drecker was this 15-year-old boy that was very passionate of finding a way to detect pancreatic cancer early because his father's best friend died. He Googled the answer using carbon nanotubes, and you watch his TED Talk, it's really interesting. I met him a few times, and he's a really cool guy. And he invented a technology that was 600 times cheaper and I think 50 times faster than any technology out there. So check him out. So some of the things that we mentioned, all this stuff, the drones and 3D printing and AI and stuff like that, that are basically driving this disruption that's going on.
Sorry, Clarence, if I can ask a question here. I mean,
sure.
I think most of us know that, for example, sensors are becoming cheaper, et cetera, and these are trends. But one of the things that prevents startups, especially from growing and stuff like that, is figuring out the right time to do something. Because even though, say, sensors are becoming cheap, and then you can figure out a startup that will focus on that particular wave, the adaptation, especially in countries like South Asia, are very, very slow. And I know Australia is probably slow as well. So coming from environments like Australia and I guess Asia, except China, leaving out China, what is it? What do you think we should do? Because I think it's great to have technology, but the adoption of the masses is also very relevant. And sometimes it's like this kick in the ass, like COVID, that takes people the time to then start thinking about, maybe we should actually adopt online practices in our business, etc. So what is it do you think that will need to happen to get faster adoption in our country?
Obviously one is the flow of information, right? I mean, there's one reason why Singularity was formed, because there are so many new research coming out, and PhD thesis being published, but you probably need a PhD yourself just to understand what is being written. So by forming Singularity, before us, an expert is somebody that tells you what cannot be done. But we need people like yourself here who are in this talk here that are innovative and come up with ideas that can solve problems. The technology is there, but it's not the technology. You know, the problem is that people with the technology normally don't know what the real problem is in the real world, and they try to make a better mousetrap, but you know, it doesn't actually apply, you know, to the local rats. I mean, it's a good example actually. I don't know about in Sri Lanka, but in Malaysia, we never use cheese to catch rats, right, or mouse, right?
Yeah.
Because you know, we use salted fish, right? Because yeah, they're probably lactose intolerant. I don't know, but so I guess the answer to your question is actually you need to have more engagement of the people in the local industry, and to be aware of things I'm talking about and the technology and so on, what's out there, because we can get you the people, right? But we don't know what the local problems are, or what solution you might have locally that can be applied globally. This is why you need meeting of the minds, you know. So running like this EXO COVID challenge and stuff like that, we bring people from all over the world together. If nothing else more than networking, you also have a cross-pollination of great ideas that would come out of it. And I've seen this happen over and over again. In terms of timing, obviously it is difficult to time stuff. Sorry, we went a bit over time, but I guess I saved the best for the last then.
No problem, Doctor. Thank you so much for your time.
All right.